Welcome to the challenge review. Let's go ahead and check out how we're going to go ahead and set up our damage system and create the collisions required for the player and enemy interaction as well as the laser and enemy interaction. So I'm going to start in my enemy AI script here. In order to handle collisions, I first need to include the private void on trigger enter 2D method. I'm going to go ahead and rename this to other as it makes more sense. It's just a variable name. It could be named anything. So anything that gets collided with our enemy is going to be stored in other. So before I even continue, I already know I'm going to be checking for the laser and the enemy. Now imagine in your game you had like 4 different enemies. They might be named something different. So this is where an enemy tag makes sense. Although the enemies are all named different, they all have one thing in common. They're enemies. So let's go ahead and create a couple tags. Let's create a tag for our laser so that we can uniquely identify it. And let's create a tag for our enemy so that we can uniquely identify that as well. Hop on over to our enemy, select tag, add tag, and we're going to go and hit this little plus icon here. And it's going to ask you to create a new tag name. Let's call this enemy. And I'm going to go ahead and create another one called laser. Okay, select your enemy, tag, enemy, and make sure you apply the prefab. If you don't apply the prefab, it will not take effect down here. In your laser, go to tag, laser, and save your scene just to make sure everything is saved and okay. And now we can go ahead and continue. Open up your enemy AI, and in here, let's go ahead and do our laser collision first. So here we're going to check for other.tag is equal to our laser. So if we hit the laser, so if we collide with the laser, so if the enemy hits the laser, what do we want to do? We basically want to say destroy the laser game object, so other.gameObject. We're going to destroy the object that hit us, and then we're going to destroy this game object. So we're going to destroy the enemy ship. So as I'm writing this enemy, I'm pretending that I am the enemy. So if the laser collides with me, I'm going to destroy it. I use other because that's the objects that is collided with me. It's stored in the variable type other. And then I'm also going to destroy myself. And if we go ahead and test this out, you'll notice here that when I fire a laser at the ship, our triple shot does not seem, okay, there we go. So we do have a bug in our code, and we're going to go ahead and look at fixing that at the end of this review. Now, you did see though that, let me move this triple shot out of the way here. If I move that out of the way, let's go ahead and try that again. You'll go ahead and see our single shot does work properly, and I accidentally shot it above the map. I apologize. Let's go ahead and try that again. And you'll see here that my laser destroys the enemy. Pretty cool, right? So we are going to fix what's wrong with my triple shot. However, I want to go ahead and continue and set up the player interaction now. So our enemy in the laser is perfect. Everything is exactly what we want. Now let's go ahead and check for the player. So here we can do an else if. Else if other.tag is equal to player. So what happens if we collide with the player? Well, our logic is a little different. We need to damage the player. So we need to call basically, we need to get a reference to the player script, and we need to call a damage method that's going to damage the player. So let's go ahead and get that set up. Hop over to the player, and here we're going to go ahead and create a method to handle our damage. So here, let's go ahead and we can put it right under movement here. We'll create a public void damage method. And every time this gets called, the logic here is subtract 1 life from the player, and then here, if lives is less than 1, meaning 0, right? That means we have no lives. Destroy this object, which is the player. So we need a life system. How do we create a life system? Well, we have 3 lives. So it's as simple as adding public int lives equals 3. Now there you go. We just created a live system in our game just by adding 1 variable, and now we're going to use it. So here we're going to go ahead, hop down to our code, And here, subtract 1 life. So every time this damage function is called, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to subtract 1 from our damage, or I'm sorry, 1 from our life. So we're going to say lives, and you can go ahead and you can say equals lives minus 1. You can also say lives minus minus. Both of these will remove 1 life from the player. And there's actually one more you could do. There's lives minus equals 1, which is the equivalent of saying lives equals lives minus 1. Whichever one of these you're more comfortable using, you're more than welcome to. Predominantly, what you'll see in the programming world is this one right here. You'll see people just type lives minus minus, which just means subtract 1 from the lives. If you wanted to add 1 life, you would say lives plus plus. As simple as that. All right, so we're going to subtract 1 life from the player. And then here, if lives is less than 1, meaning we have 0 lives, let's destroy it. So here, we're going to go ahead and check our lives. We're going to say if lives is less than 1, destroy this .gameObject. Okay, now all we have to do is we need to call this method when the enemy collides with our player. So here, we're going to go ahead and do that. Now, how do we access the player? That's where getComponent comes in, right? We need a handle to the player, and we need to assign it to the component on the player. So we need to get the game object, other, get component, and we're looking for the player component. Now that we have the player component, let's check if it exists. So if player is not equal to null, meaning that the component does exist and we have the player referenced, then what we want to do is we want to say player.damage. And by calling that, we will now subtract 1 life from the player and check if it has any remaining lives. If it doesn't, then we're going to go ahead and destroy the object. So let's go ahead and test this out. As you can see here on our player, we have lives is 3. And if we go ahead and collide with the enemy, it should, yeah. Okay, so as you can see here, my lives is 2. My lives is 1. My lives is 0. And our player is gone. We've deleted our player because we're dead. So now let's go ahead and make it to where when the enemy collides with us, he will get killed no matter what. So hop into the enemy AI. So first thing we want to do is if it collides with the player, we're going to do all the logic. And then the last thing we want to do after damaging the player is we're going to say destroy. We're going to go ahead and say destroy this .gameObject. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this out, test it out. You can see here on my player that we have 3 lives. And what's going to happen here is I'm going to hit the ship. I have 2 lives, and the enemy was destroyed. So there you go. We have a fully functioning damaging and health system, as well as our game is now ready for collision detection between player and laser. Now, I did notice that there was an issue with my lasers on my triple shot. For some reason, my triple shot was not damaging our ship. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. By dragging in the triple shot power up, or I'm sorry, the triple shot, let's go ahead and take a look at its properties. So here we have the laser script, and the sorting layer is on the foreground, which is all correct. However, you'll notice that these lasers don't have any colliders on them, and that's what's wrong. So check it out. Look at our laser here. You can see here that the laser here has a box collider 2D and a rigid body 2D. So that's all we have to do. Let's click on all 3 of these lasers here, and let's simply add together while they're all selected. We'll add a box collider 2D, which should add colliders around them nicely, which it did. And then we're also going to add a rigid body 2D and make sure your gravity scale is set to 0. Let's go ahead and save your scene. You can delete the triple shot out. And let's go ahead and give this a shot. I'm going to go ahead and click the triple shot power up. And as you can see now, okay, it actually still did not destroy the object. So let's figure out why. Also, you'll notice in the hierarchy, we have a bunch of triple shot empty objects just living on here forever. So let's go ahead and retest that out. Let's make sure this works properly. So here we go. Okay, so our lasers did indeed just go right through it. So let's figure out why that is. Looking at our player here, looking at our enemy, we can see here we have a box collider 2D. We're on the foreground layer. And is trigger is checked. If we click on my triple shot objects, let's bring them into the scene here. Ah, there you go. I made a rookie mistake. We added, so go ahead and select all three of them. Let's add the components back. I forgot to apply my prefab. So what I need to do is I need to add my rigid body 2D back, set the gravity scale to 0, and then we're going to go ahead and add the box collider 2D and make sure is trigger is set to true. From there, make sure you go to the triple shot, hit apply. Okay, let's go ahead and test that out. You can delete this. Let's go ahead and collect the triple shot, and now we should be good to go. And we are still not good to go. So why not? Why does one laser work, but our triple shot does not? Let's take a look here. If I bring the triple shot back in, you can see our triple shot is at 0, 0, which is fine. Our center laser and everything does have a rigid body attached. Gravity scale is set to 0. And it has a box collider 2D. And they are on the foreground layer. So why is it that this is not working? Well guys, let's see if we can figure this out. So I know that our triple shot is set up correctly. However, it just occurred to me that there's a difference between the lasers in my triple shot and the laser right here. And it's the fact that all three of these lasers are not tagged as laser. If you remember, in our collision system, we're checking for the tag of laser. Now if we go ahead and save our scene, let's go ahead and retry this. I'm going to go ahead and click on my player here, and I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that can triple shot is already checked. Now we should be able to destroy it. Let's try it out. And there we go. Now our triple shot is working amazing. And last but not least, let's go ahead and clean up these triple shots here. You can see here constantly in the hierarchy here that the triple shots are being cloned out. Now to solve that problem, it's really, really easy. We'll go ahead and hop in here. And what we're going to do here is if transform.position.y is greater than or equal to 6, we're going to destroy this object. What we're also going to do is we need to destroy the parent object. Now this might not actually be the best place to do that. Although, no, it might actually be. So what I want to do here is I need to check if the object has a parent, and if it does, I want to destroy it. So here, I'm going to go ahead and say if transform.parent does not equal null, meaning that it has a parent. That means that these lasers are part of a child object, which they are. It's just an empty game object. Then we also need to say destroy transform.parent, and that's going to destroy the parent object. We'll go ahead and save that. That will clean up our scene a bit because we're destroying now the parent. Also, in our enemy AI here, we also want to do the same thing here because we're not always just shooting you with one laser. If we shoot you with one of the triple shot lasers, we need to check and see if that object had a parent. So we're going to do the exact same thing. Before we destroy the other object, we're also just going to check to see if the other object has a parent. So if other.parent, I think maybe we can do. I'm sorry, no, we need to say if other.transform.parent is not equal to null, then we'll go ahead and say destroy other.transform.parent. Now, this might actually not work because we're destroying a transform component and not a game object. So I may need to actually extend it further and just write game object like that. And I believe I do. It should give us an error if that is the case. Let's see here. We'll go ahead and compile it. Okay, it looks like it's actually okay. It looks like you can destroy objects using the transform. However, to keep it consistent, I am going to recommend that you always use game object. So transform.parent.gameObject, just to be specific. So let's go ahead and test that out. Our triple shot is already active, and we should be able to, there we go, now it destroys. Alrighty, hope you guys learned something, and I will see you guys in the next video.